All right, welcome to the KissFAQ feedback loop, our opportunity to respond to some of the comments viewers have left on our videos for the past week. You know what? You take the time to comment, I might as well take the time to respond. We do appreciate you wherever you listen to this show. It's also an opportunity to briefly catch up on stuff that we may have skipped on the weekly show episode. And this week, there's three quick items to mention. First, and most importantly, Bruce Kulick returned to the stage recently. He appeared with Todd Kearns and friends at the Copa Room at the Bootleggers Italian Bistro in Las Vegas for a great version of Tears Are Falling. That is, of course, the song that made me a Kiss fan. So I'm very happy to see Bruce back in action after quite a severe surgery, and he's looking great and sounding even better. So, again, good to see you back out there, Bruce. Stay well and enjoy life. Also, July 30th, Kiss dropped the second single from the forthcoming Destroys Anaheim 76 album. This time it's Do You Love Me, complete with Gene Simmons' cookie-cutter vocals, which are really fun to hear. You know what? I'm excited for this release, and it's due later this month. It's available in a variety of formats that probably fit every need, from the physical to the digital to the not purchasing, obviously, for those who don't want to have anything. It's what can be done with some very cool assets that sit in the Universal Vault. So we've talked about it. Great to see these multi-tracks put to great use with Eddie Kramer revisiting that and creating an album for us 50 years later. What better time for it? And then just dropping, I think it's this morning, I got the email. Tommy Thayer will be at the Mitsubishi Elektrikhalle in Dusseldorf, Deutschland on October the 30th for an appearance celebrating Kiss's 50th anniversary in Germany. So they're celebrating 50 years in Germany. Even better is there's additional special guests at this event, including the fabulous Doro Pesch. I was a fan of Warlock back in the day, and of course Gene Simmons produced her, I think, 1990 album, which Tommy was involved in as well. The Kiss Alive Forever band will perform live, and two other guests are Ossie Hop, or Hope. I don't know how you say that with a German pronunciation, so I apologize. But he was a promoter in recent years for a lot of the Kiss tours. I'm not sure if he had anything to do with the original tour back in 76, where the Scorpions opened, but presumably he'll be doing either signings or Q&A or some such. It isn't detailed what his function is there other than special guest. But also photographer Dee Dee Zill, who put out an absolutely incredible Kiss photo book a few years ago now, will be on hand, and who knows if he'll have prints for sale or copies of the book or who knows what. But again, shot some amazing photos of the band throughout their history. So very cool. Tickets go on sale for this event on August the 11th. Check kissonline.com for more information. And now let's move into the video comments. I've been snowed under at work, and obviously with the couple of book projects that we're trying to, well, one is ready to press print on and the other is not, but very, very busy time at the moment with that and family life. So only one video in the past week to comment on. Let's get started on KissFAQ podcast episode 648, A Wasted Year, 1986. So this was just one of those hypotheticals of what if they did something different than they did in 1986 and the extended period of time that they took off between the release of Asylum and recording Crazy Nights. Now, we all know the reasons, the purpose of that gap, but again, there are alternatives that we thought worthy of discussion. So let's jump into the comments. Robert Michaels, in 1986, I remember Van Hagar and David Lee Roth filling the void. Yeah, I agree. They certainly did fill the void in a certain sense. Van Hagar, I didn't care for. I did not like 5150. The only thing I liked was the radio show live that put that material in a live setting and made it more palatable. But it was just too, I don't know, it didn't appeal to me whatsoever. David Lee Roth did appeal to me, and that was my first ever live concert. So I mentioned Tesla on the show, and I think I mentioned Eat 'em and Smile. But again, that was a really fun time. Just a shame his career was on a downward trajectory somewhat after that. Derek Count titled. I have no idea how to say that, so I apologize. 1986 was still a time when 2 years between albums seemed like an eternity, so the wait for a new album during this period made Crazy Nights the most anticipated Kiss album in Kiss's history, probably to this day. The wait for Revenge and the post-Car was longer, but much different. By then, fans were used to waiting several years for new albums, but the wait for Crazy Nights was unprecedented for Kiss fans. At first, we heard the album was called Condemnation, then about 6 months go by and it's changed to Who Dares Wins. Somewhere in between, we got Kiss Exposed in the spring of '87, and that tided us over for a few months. I remember the lead up to Exposed even seemed similar to the release of an actual album. And that was something that we commented on during the show, that they put a 3-month promotional push into that video, so they were really going hard and heavy in establishing Polygram music video. Continuing with his comments, we counted the days for Exposed, and that took us into the summer. By the end of the summer, we finally got official news that Crazy Nights would be the new album, and it would be out into September, the beginning of my senior high school year in high school. Regarding 1986, it was Turbo, Somewhere in Time, Master of Puppets, 5150, Eat 'em a Smile, Malmsteen's Trilogy, fantastic album, Boston's Third Stage, fantastic album. All of those are fantastic albums for me. And I was still listening to some 1985 releases like Under Lock and Key, Marching Out, Vandenberg, and Alcatraz. There's no overstating how much great music was being released on a weekly basis back then. That's a lengthy comment. Thank you for taking the time for that. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with all of that, the sentiment of it. For me, as a Kiss fan, as a new Kiss fan particularly, I had so much catching up to do that on the one hand, it seemed like, well, I want new stuff. I want to experience that excitement of a new Kiss album. But on the other hand, a lot of those albums I was listening to as well and enjoying. So there was no drought. There was just a break from Kiss. And there's so much more to listen to. I mean, Malmsteen's Trilogy, fantastic. Master of Puppets. Oddly, I did not like Master of Puppets at all when I first got it. I actually got it from Columbia House and threw it in the trash. Boy, my taste sure changed. Michael King, 1968. First time I saw Kiss, Burn Arena, 4/11/86, second to last show of the tour. Yeah, great tour. There's a lot of cool recordings from that show. Peter Balk. Back then, 1986 felt like an eternity. My friends and I were genuinely worried Kiss had disappeared from the magazines here in Europe. They were supposed to headline Monsters of Rock in UK and Europe, but somehow those plans fell through, and Ozzy ended up headlining instead. After the opening month of the US tour in November 1985, there was virtually no coverage at all. It felt like the world had simply moved on. Then late in the summer of '86, photos of Kiss filming Exposed finally appeared. If I remember correctly, first in Sweden's OK magazine, and then in Hickrent, the Dutch magazine, which often reprinted OK's photos and articles. Those Exposed pictures were the first real sign of life we'd seen in months. After that, we had to wait another year for Exposed to be released on VHS. I remember it coming out in the US first, so I ended up buying an insanely expensive NTSC import. Yeah, so different perspective from the European side. I wasn't in Europe at the side. I was in Binghamton. So, again, as that newbie fan, I never saw it from the other side of the pond. Interesting, particularly with those magazines that they were moving on, but all the music magazines, if you look at Kerrang in the period as well, if you look at NME or maybe some Record Mirror, had very much changed the bands that they were following. And in Britain, at least, I think it would be fair to say that heavy metal had somewhat moved out of the ascendancy in the mainstream. It was still very, very popular, but it had segmented off somewhat. I mean, I remember seeing some bands being featured in Kerrang issues during the period. I'm like, what are they doing in this magazine? But I guess music is music. All right, Frank Andalucci Jr., apologies. Hypothetically speaking, and rewriting history here, if Kiss made Animalize uncensored into Alive 3 after Creatures Lick It Up and Animalize, it would have been a good bookend. Give Gene and Paul some room, let the demon go, and then blend the songs from Asylum with Crazy Nights for the MTV album they were dying for. If that album bonds and really smashes. So Alive 3 was one of the things that we talked about. Peter reminded me about the facts that had come out in late 84 that they'd be recording Alive 3 at Kobo, and it only became the video. It never became the album part of that component for legal reasons or whatever. That never happened. But it would have made a good bookend at that point in 85 or at least delay it until after the next tour and include the Asylum stuff. So we'll see. Bruce Wayne, Ken is right. That first EZO album isn't bad. Give it a listen. I'll have to go revisit it. I've got a copy in my LP stack that I don't think I've ever spun. Charles Bronson. Now, if Vinny was still in the band, he would have pushed them to put something out in 1986, either a studio album or an Alive 3. Yeah, I'm sure he would have loved to have taken a whole side for his guitar solo, and I probably would have listened to it and loved it. Jay Zackstad, they should do Hard Times to Save Your Love. They should have done on the Dynasty tour instead of the solo songs. Potentially. I think they should have done a couple of special shows and featured more of the solo album songs and then moved on in Kiss. But think back to, I talked about in one of the earlier comments as well, the long wait between albums. Well, imagine what it was like to be a Kiss fan, and the last studio tracks you got were in late 77, then you have to wait until 79 for the next Kiss album. So it wasn't like there weren't gaps, it's just that there was a different kind of interim filler for that. Joseph Kiss Sr., I love Kiss Exposed, not only the older footage, I thought it was unintentionally or intentionally funny. Yeah, Killer 8186, EZO for me. They were known as Flatbacker before this in Japan. They released an album called ESA in 1986. It's more punk and thrash sounding. I was listening to a lot of Loudness, Lightning Strikes, Ultimate Sin, Cinderella Night Songs, Eat 'em a Smile, Master of Puppets, Rain and Blood, and others. I really did not miss Kiss. So you did accept substitutes. EZO was awesome from Tony Ekman. Dale McMillan, didn't they tour half the year and then spend the rest of it creating songs for the Crazy Nights album? But wouldn't it have been cool if they'd done a Live 3 in 86 instead of Singer doing it in 93? I think I'm with plenty of other fans who think a Live 3 should have been with Eric Carr, either as a memorial, and then Eric Singer should certainly have had an Alive in his tenure as well. Marcella, what was the book that Mark mentioned? C.K. Lentz, Kiss and Sell, for those who listened. I have no idea what Dr. Tortoisell is into, but we'll skip that one. I wonder how a Paul Stanley solo album track list would have been. I adore When Two Hearts Collide, Don't Let Go. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I still think some of those songs on Crazy Nights would have been better served on a Paul Stanley solo album, and Hide Your Heart would probably be number one since it gets ignored from Crazy Nights in 87, and we know it was kicking around by then. Jay Zackstad. Master of Puppets, Rain and Blood, Rage for Order, Somewhere in Time, Eat 'em and Smile. Great list of albums. I've only recently gotten into Queensryche, and I really dig Rage for Order. Good album. Very good album. All right, so that's the comments from the show itself. I also put up a poll asking folk, what should Kiss have done in 1986? If you've got an other, post in the comments. And I gave everyone the options of hit the studio and keep cranking out new albums, compile an Alive 3, Paul should have gone solo, and anything else to keep Gene from Hollywood. And not surprisingly, Alive 3 wins with the majority. The least popular one of those options is Paul should have done a solo album, with only 10% of respondents, followed by hit the studio and just put out another album. And second most popular choice was anything to keep Gene away from Hollywood. Some of the comments here was Brandon Furlong, an Alive 3 of songs just from Dynasty, Unmasked, Elder Creatures, Lick It Up, Animalize, and Asylum would have done big numbers and would have been a fantastic album. Yeah, I don't know if it would have done good numbers for Kiss mid-'80s, but I certainly would have liked it. Dakota Escher, I love Crazy Nights, so went with the other option, just stick to what you're doing. Yeah, nothing wrong with that either. Ron Albanese, they should have stopped. Paul goes solo, probably sells gold, and gets some good opening slots, and maybe even produces. Gene acts and produces. What would have been better than creating a super fractured band, splitting track listings for publishing, saving money by producing themselves, releasing demos, etc. The reunion still probably would have happened anyway, in the same way. And Kiss should not have gone west. California Kiss was a real thing. They were never the same. Yeah, okay, there's Peter's comment about the Alive 3 already planned for 85 that was recorded in Detroit. Thanks, Peter, for reminding me of that. Donnie Kellerman, Crazy Nights is one of the worst LPs they put out, and Asylum is the worst look they ever have. The Alive thing mentioned above was the only real alternative they have. Fair enough. Joe Pamplemousse. Quit. Kiss were like the Beatles. Imagine the Beatles continuing and copying styles to survive. Me either. Should have died in 1980. I was made for loving you was embarrassing enough. That got a few comments. Let's see. Kiss are nowhere near the Beatles. Agree. Joe responds with all 4 members right sang lead and had fans for. Yeah, that's fair, but Kiss are no Beatles. Period. As much as I love both. All right, so that's the comments for this week. It was a fun episode. I mean, what ifs are just food for thought, and we'll keep seeing where the show takes us. I'm looking forward to the rest of this month. We've got some fun episodes lined up. No doubt we're going to be doing an episode on Anaheim when it drops. That's really the biggest excitement. Who knows what other announcements there may be. All right, so that's going to be it for now. Thanks for tuning in. See you soon.
Oh, look, you're still here, watching or listening. We're not sponsored, monetized, or supervised. We're only in this for subs and likes and kicks. So why don't you mash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about today's episode.